say anything. I can kind of lead into this.
Victoria has.
We got a hand up.
Silsby has her hand up.
There she go. Okay, Victoria.
Mr. Beatty, Select Chair, is it all right if I bring up two issues simultaneously, or do you want me to raise my hand a second time?
Are these issues relative to the public hearing that we're conducting right now, relative to the roads at Green Mountain Estates?
No, that's
no,
that's my bad. So
okay, let me just run briefly through the agenda here. We are opening with a public hearing, which we're conducting right now. And then the public comments is the next agenda item after we dispose of this hearing.
that's fine. That's fair. I heard public comments, so I raised my hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, my bad. These would be public comments relative.
Hey, we're
to
both bad, Ivan.
All
right, hand is.
When we looked at the roads today, we're all fairly familiar with the layout over there, and there's not a whole lot new going on. Some of the discussions that I had with the residents that live there related to concerns over changing the profile or the elevation of the street by paving it. That it might exacerbate some of the drainage issues that are going on there. So I know people want that to be part of the record here, and I just wanted to, there might be some discussion over specific places where the request may be to actually lower the road, the existing profile of the road, so that the final paved surface is actually lower than what the road is now. I heard quite a few of those comments. And the bearing in mind that the normal situation would be for the road to be crowned and elevated with swales on the side that would collect water and dissipate it over time. But we have, it's a very flat subdivision, and there's not a lot of room for water to sit around waiting to be absorbed on one hand, and then the other hand, of course, is the occasional flooding, which seems to be more prevalent than it used to be. I will take note that in the context of walking around and talking to people and talking to other select board members, that this last storm that we had on Wednesday, which by my rain gauge was over 3 inches at the farm, there was some high water around town, but that particular area didn't seem to be affected too badly by it. So that was encouraging. But if anybody has any comments at this point, we'd love to get it into the record.
I just have a comment. There used to be soil on each side of the road. All the way down to the
Yeah, Deb,
but they, oh, sorry.
yeah, just so the people that are on the Zoom can hear you, there's a microphone on the podium. I'm sorry about that.
Ivan, sorry to interrupt. I'm getting several reports that the audio from GNAT is inaudible. People can't hear anything that's going on. If you could just check.
Did always have a swell on the, a side of each side of the road, a ditch like, and over the years, people have piled stuff in, after something goes on, they have to replace their, whether it's flooding or whatever. So there always was around in the middle of the road and swales going down. That's where people would pump their basements out and go down the swales in the road as much as possible.
Yeah.
But over the years, it's been filled in, people wanting to have a nice level lawn to get to the road and didn't realize, I don't think they realized that was there for a purpose. Just want to say that it was there for a purpose. And there is still spots where you can see that there was a swale. And pretty much most places had that. So we've never really had much of a problem with water standing in the road. It usually, it never gets really muddy. Most roads would if they.
I do realize that the whole development sits on gravel, and that the base under that road is pretty darn good because of that. Thanks for that, Deb. I did notice that there were a lot of places where they're just I know in the way that the water, when there's a flood, the way that the water moves through the development is different than it used to be because of one section of Green Mountain Road that's been raised considerably. Kenny pointed that out to me. And Jeff Williams is well aware of that too. Yeah.
She's been raised and just makes the corner and goes down, settle and fell like that. Yeah.
So, other comments, things that you'd like to get into the record on this? Everybody just wants to get it done.
Can we get it done before the weekend with another storm?
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna beat, if we're gonna beat that one. Hopefully, yeah, come on.
Scott Casey, just to reiterate what you were doing about the level of the road. My house is at 263 Green Mountain Road. Talked to Jeff when he was over there. He said about taking product away from in front of my house, which is across the street from Sue's house, which was one of the driveways we were talking about. Because right now my lawn is basically below the road level. Okay. So any type of runoff will be flooding my front lawn and possibly into my basement. So, and he said that
That would be a
in that area that he was talking about taking some product out.
Yeah, and Scott,
I need to get that on.
under, like I said, under a normal situation, the road would be elevated to have a
Yeah.
cut, and you want to get the water off the road
Yeah.
into a swale beside it, like Deb was talking about.
Yeah,
But the trouble is, as flat as that is, if
that area.
elevated, it's a flat shot all the way to your house and your basement. There's really no place to
Yeah, so that's why I was talking about taking some product out instead of adding 4 more inches.
Yeah.
To take some out to, get a little bit lower. Plus, right now, that's one of my driveways is where the front of the driveway, the water stands. We had some puddling there where you saw it was all dried out. But it puddles right there at the front of my driveway.
I did hear one comment during the course of the inspection talking about that section of Green Mountain Road where it meets Valley Pass and it's been elevated with it. Actually, that should be dropped down far enough so that could actually be a conduit for water. I think we should look at that. It would have to still be crowned, so you don't get,
Yeah.
so you don't get standing water in the middle of the road in the winter that would freeze and
Yeah.
cause a problem. I don't know if it would provide enough of a profile cross-section to handle the volume of water that comes down through there, but it would handle some of it, but it may still spread onto the lawns, but I'd be willing to take a look at it or have somebody look at that and see if that's a viable
Jeff
option.
said something about being that they take some of the product out in that area,
Yeah, right in that area.
within that area. I just wanted that on the record too.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, it's Jim Carroll. You might hear a
Jim, welcome
voice.
back.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the technology. I actually had to move upstairs, I think, to get a little elevation. If it's all right, Mr. Chairman, a couple of points I'd just like to have placed on the record for the purposes of establishing the record for the purposes of this particular hearing. Because under the statute, under section 710, the board's job is to determine whether or not the acceptance and dedication of the roads and the laying out and what classification is appropriate is a question of what's in the public good, necessity, and convenience of the public and the folks that are served by this particular set of roads. That's kind of the standard that applies. And just from the basis of my more recent involvement in this, what has been about almost a 20-year history in connection with this particular development and the common roads and utilities there. From my perspective, I could see multiple reasons why accepting the roads would be in the best and public good and necessity and convenience of not only the people who reside and live at this particular subdivision, but also throughout town. Mostly because at this particular point in time, there's no common basis or mechanism by which the maintenance and upkeep of these gravel roads has been put into place, notwithstanding about 20 years of litigation. Also, through dedication and acceptance, we'll be able to actually acquire the fee to these 50-foot strips. So the town, in addition to accepting the roads into its town highway system, will actually own the underlying land in connection with the 50-foot rights-of-way that abut these particular roads, as well as the common utilities that exist in the ground, which is going to position the town to provide for the better health, safety, and welfare of the community in general, as well as being able to control and provide better protection for nearby public water supplies and utility systems, and all the time securing some resources, the resources out of the estate necessary to upgrade these common roads and utilities to acceptable standards for Manchester. And last but not least, it's going to resolve an enormously long, complicated, and multiple appeal dispute equitably, I think, amongst all the parties that have any kind of stake in this particular situation. So I'm seeing this as being something that certainly the board could consider as part of this process as being in the public good, necessity, and convenience. In connection with all of that, just for the purposes of the record, a set of exhibits has been prepared for submission to the board, along with an exhibit list of documents that may be helpful to the board in actually reaching and drafting its report of findings, which will need to be in writing, signed by the board members, and recorded. And there are some 14 exhibits that have at this point been put before the board, which I think will be useful in that drafting process. One is the actual agreement that Mr. Beatty, you had referred to before, and that's referenced in the notice in connection with the agreement to dedicate and accept common roads, which have a lot of conditions attached to it. some of which still need to be fulfilled. So in moving forward with any approval of the acceptance and dedication of roads, it will be done, or I would recommend it be done, subject to completing all of the conditions under the agreement, and there are a few left to complete. In fact, this process is one of those conditions that we're hoping to accomplish in moving forward. There are also a whole set of orders out of the probate court from the probate division of the Bennington unit approving the estate's transfer of the roads, the common utilities, and also approving the agreement that had been signed between the town and the Hayes Estates and the distribution of assets to the town for the purposes of upgrading the common utilities. Those are attached and put in the exhibits as well. Then there are the underlying primary surveys, which basically document the existence of these two roads and their locations. The town has recently retained the services of Deb Mithofer to verify those locations and that they are in keeping and more or less in existence on the ground as they were laid out in the original survey that pertained to this particular subdivision. There's also a title opinion and report that's been issued by Lon McClintock, who was an attorney who represented many of the Mountain View Estate property owners, was most familiar with the title, and he has provided a title opinion in connection with the estate's ability to transfer those assets into the town. And that has been provided as well. And that's about it. And I just wanted to make sure to put those items in the record. Those exhibits, I think there's paper copies, I believe, before you, but there are also electronic copies that are available to the board and obviously the public as well. I think I've said my piece, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I actually have one question for you, based on the information that came up during our inspection. Deb Mithofer was there, and I looked at some of the work that she's done, and she pointed out at two different locations. One on the southeast corner of Green Mountain Estates, where the actual traveled way of the road encroaches onto the inner radius to the point where it's on private property and outside of the right of way. The other is down on the intersection that we were just talking about, the northern intersection of Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass, where Valley Pass touches the edge of the right of way. It looks like if we pave a 22-foot section, we could probably, in both cases, get the road well into the right of way without making huge changes to what's happening there. But I was wondering, I can remember at some point being told that the actual, over some period of time, the actual traveled portion of the road becomes the right of way. Do you know anything about any decisions that were made that would substantiate that perspective?
Well, Mr. Chairman, there is a statute that basically says that a traveled way, absent any other information or title information of record by way of either a deed or a highway layout, that the presumption is that the center of the traveled surface is the center of the right of way.
Yeah.
If, however, there is other information from which it can be determined where a right of way was actually laid out in the form, for instance, of surveys, such as we have, and other information, those would prevail in terms of the locations of the right of way. So to the extent that the traveled surface has in some ways either drifted or originally been laid out in a manner which, as I understand it, is a slight encroachment, it would probably be best to move that back within the right of way, absent any other arrangement with the landowner.
Thank you. That's been very helpful. And it looks like that could be easily accomplished. The other helpful part of your presentation, going back historically, in the late 60s, early 70s, into the mid 70s, there was a lot of development in town. And the select board and town officials were pretty much accepting any private road once it was developed as a public road and making it part of the infrastructure of the town. In the mid to late 70s, there were a number of roads that came in that were sketchy at best, certainly weren't up to what we would consider to be town standards, even though we didn't have a standard at that time. We developed town standards for roads. And we kind of, at that point in time, and in the very early 80s, decided that we weren't going to just categorically accept private roads, that it had to be to the benefit of the town to take the road, and the road had to be at town specs before we would accept it. And in my tenure on the board, which is over 40 years now, we haven't accepted a lot of roads. And as Doug will attest, when we started, I think you were on the select board when we started talking about this, but certainly you've been on the water board ever since, and it's been a main topic of conversation. I was generally not in favor of accepting the road because of the policy that we had in place. But I think in the context of everything else, and the fact that there's 42 homes on it, I'm not discounting that. I mean, it's a big chunk of our community, but in the context of the water distribution in there, the sewer collection system, the town acquisition of those two being to the benefit of the community, this being an integral part of that whole agreement, I find it to be not a precedent-setting situation at all, that it makes sense for the town to do all this, have it all. So I've come around on this, as Doug will attest, to supporting it. And, now we're just ironing out the details, but I wanted everybody to be generally aware that the town is not in the business of accepting private roads, right and left. On my way here from my house this evening, I passed 11 private roads in a 2-mile journey. And everybody that's on those roads would love to have the town take over their road. That's just in that one small section of town. There's a lot of private roads in town. And it would be a huge burden for the town to take on that extra infrastructure. But in this particular case, I find it to be unique and and in the best interest of the town to do so. So, and I think, Jim, your comments helped to solidify that. Other comments from people that are here? This is your chance to have an impact and get it into the record. Hearing none, we really have a couple of options. My suggestion would be to close the hearing. If we feel that we've got all the testimony that we feel in order to make a decision on this. The first option, of course, would be to close the hearing, take it under advisement, and make a decision at a later date. The second option would be to close the hearing and actually take action on what we've discussed here.
I'm
Mr.
prepared to
Chair-
take action.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but if I could just add to that, the statute does require written findings from
Yes.
the select board that need to be made within 60 days. That's the outside limit. And it's certainly true that this can be done a lot faster than 60 days, assuming that the select board is all in agreement. So I do think the options would be to either just close the hearing, begin the deliberation process. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so the board is entitled to deliberate either as a board or through the exchange of draft reports that once approved could get signed by the entirety of the board without the need for another hearing. Then once it is signed and issued, that becomes the decision, the report of findings that will then be served on all of the parties who were provided with notice and recorded, which would then constitute the dedication and acceptance, conditioned on the completion of the other arrangements that need to happen in the agreement. So you can either, I think, under these circumstances, simply close the hearing and go into deliberative session with the idea of issuing a report, or if the board is inclined to think that they're in favor of accepting this, to direct either myself or the town manager with my assistance to provide a written draft report for its consideration, approving of the dedication and acceptance. And there's one other item, which is some discussion of the classification or some understanding of what the board might want by way of a classification, if its inclination here tonight is to direct us to prepare a report accepting the dedication and acceptance. I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And should the discussion regarding classification take place in the context of the public hearing, or is that something we can determine after the hearing is closed?
You can determine that after the hearing is closed.
Okay,
You can do that in
thank you.
deliberation.
We do have a motion that I think you've vetted, should we decide to go forward affirmatively on this. That one of the board members is prepared to make, which would, I believe, would let the people know that we're acting in an affirmative matter, but starting the process of creating the findings and the decision. So we'll take the.
Heidi was, said that she was in favor of that.
Yeah, I think
I'm in favor of that.
at this point, Greg, why don't you float a motion?
There we go. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move, we close the hearing regarding the dedication, acceptance, laying out and classification of private roads, Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass Road. Take the matter under advisement for further deliberations with instructions to the town manager and with the assistance of counsel to draft a report of findings for the select board's review, approving the dedication, acceptance, and laying out of the roads as Class 3 town highways, conditioned on the completion of all requirements and obligations under the agreement.
Second.
It's moved and seconded under discussion. Mr. Carroll, does that meet the concerns that you raised?
It absolutely does. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So is there any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That appears to be 5-0. It is 5-0, and we're moving forward.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Select Board. Appreciate your tolerance of my
Well,
My
we hope
situation.
we hope you're feeling better, and glad you were able to come back and attend the meeting with us because it was very helpful.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
It's never too late. Go ahead.
The question is, now you're saying it's a Class 3 road?
We didn't say it, no,
Yeah,
we haven't made that determination yet.
Well, he just said it.
Well,
That's why I was wondering, it's already
Yeah.
been decided, it's gonna be Class 3, because you said you could discuss it after,
yeah,
but it's written in the motion.
yeah, and
Is it supposed to be a Class 3 road or not? I mean,
that was our expectation, was that it would be a 3.
what is that
Yeah.
considered, when it's considered a Class 3 road? I don't know who I'm asking.
Yeah, Jim,
You want me to respond to that, Mr. Chair?
yes, thank you.
Yeah. So the motion as passed is really a direction for the town manager with my assistance, if he'll have me, to put a report of findings together, a draft for approval by the full select board, with the direction that it be drafted in such a manner as to approve the acceptance, the dedication, laying out of the road, and also to include an expectation that they would sign and finally approve of it as being a Class 3 road, which, given basically my understanding of the statutes and the classification system, is and would appear to be the most appropriate classification for both of these roads in Manchester's highway system. That motion is really a direction to say, draft something and bring it back to us to consider, which approves of all of those things. The motion that's been passed is really more a direction to us to provide those findings. The decision itself, made by the select board, really won't be made until a majority, and in this case, the entirety of the select board signs that document. So it is entirely possible we could come back with a draft, and the select board could go into deliberations and decide, no, we want it to be a different class of some sort and provide different directions. I think if the motion was framed in this way, to, I think, give some assurance that, as indicated tonight by the vote, there is a predisposition on behalf of the select board to approve this acceptance and dedication, and directions to prepare a report that says so. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you. The question was, what's the difference between say a Class 2? Yeah, okay. Class 1 and Class 2 are primarily arterial roads that serve general transportation of the public. Class 3 would be more of a neighborhood road like that generally is used by the people that live in that area. Class 4 is a town road, but it's not maintained by the town. There's no maintenance obligation. So the town would, the Class 1, 2, and 3 all have the same maintenance obligation from the town. Class 4 is closer to a trail, but it's because of the neighborhood. It primarily serves the neighborhood, not the general public, and they're going through town. You concur with that?
I do. It has to do also with volume and the type of road being built for that. This is obviously a neighborhood road, Class 3.
So if we've moved on from this, we've taken action. The next agenda item would be public comments. Victoria, this is your chance to chime in. The public comments section is for anything that you want to talk about that's germane to this meeting, but not on the agenda. It's not listed on the agenda, but if you want to bring it up, you may. And Victoria, are you prepared at this point to make your comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple weeks ago, I was really pleased to see that the town has made concerted efforts to repaint the center line on many of the roads throughout town. I'm wondering, and what other painting might be scheduled for the famous or infamous intersection of Beach and Barnumville. So to Mr. Cutler, I know that he has really had some insight as to next steps and needs of this intersection. And one was to repaint and clarify the lanes and the stopping points at that intersection, which means white stripes and possible railroad markings. The other way to look at this is that the sooner this intersection safety is increased, then the less you're going to hear from me.
Yeah, okay.
I
we-
won't be
we-
that continual thorn in your side. I
Yeah.
think I opened this conversation in October of 2023. And, you know, it's what, 9 months later, 10 months later, we're still having this conversation.
Yeah, the difficulty in the physical layout of that intersection is there's a few problems with it.
Yeah,
And of
well,
course,
Ivan, you and I both
it's the
have had this conversation.
Yeah, but it's the proximity to the railroad tracks is one. There's a huge expanse of pavement there. And the stopping points and stopping lines for anyone who's traveling on Barnumville Road are pretty clear and pretty easy to tell. I don't think anybody follows the yellow line if they're coming south on Beach and they're turning east on Barnumville Road. Nobody goes all the way out to the end and makes their turn. They cut in on it. And I'm going to finish what I'm saying, Victoria. There's been conversations of perhaps somehow creating an island. But here's the problem with that. That whole intersection is sloped toward the center of the paved portion, and there's a drain in the middle of the intersection on Beach Street, which would make it really hard to accommodate some kind of an island to direct people around it without causing a drainage issue there. So there are a number of problems. I know when I'm turning left from Beach onto Barnumville to go toward my farm, I go to the end of that yellow stripe and then make the left turn like you should. And when I do that, 1, 2, or 3 people are all passing me on the inside thinking that I'm going west on Barnumville, but what I'm really doing is following the road. So I see the problem on a regular basis, and it's going to take somebody smarter than I to figure out how to address that.
I'm just thinking about the
I
other.
really appreciate the historical perspective, recounting of the historical perspective, because when I opened this conversation, Ivan, in October of last year, you shared these very sentiments. So I'm well aware, because I too am like you. I drive that intersection almost daily. But my question is, and maybe it's my misunderstanding, but at previous times when I've been at these meetings bringing up this intersection, there has been an indication of at least repainting the white stopping lines. And as far as my eyesight is indicating, the Beach portion of the intersection could do with not just repainting the white stripes, but painting some white stripes. And I agree, Ivan, I too have been passed. I too counted 8 cars coming from the direction of your property towards Manchester. 8 cars in a row made a right-hand turn onto Beach the other day without stopping. 2 door septic trucks came from Beach, making left-hand turns as though they were going up past your property. Are we going to wait for another accident at that intersection before something happens?
So Sylvie, I think you remember, or Victoria, sorry. Yeah, do that every once in a while because of Sylvia. Where is Sylvia?
I know, I really miss her. Is she okay?
I saw her the other day.
Yeah, I saw her driving the other day, but
Okay.
anyway.
I'm going to rule that totally germane to the issue.
What I was gonna say was, we did put in the new signs that indicate there was a stop ahead. I too saw some people recently going through onto Beach Street, making that right turn without stopping. And my question to the town manager is, we did talk about doing some new bars, stop bars. And instead of actually putting in a physical island, could we paint an island that wouldn't interfere with the drainage? So paint some kind of, oblong thing that's like an island that separates it and at least we could try that. But I think we talked about the bars that need to be the stop bars on that we could do, I think.
Yeah.
And the signs, I think the signs are great. I mean, so these are signs that
Yes,
are well back.
but Mr. Cutler, to your point, and I appreciate the new signage, but you watched yourself drivers disregarding the new
I
signage.
did see it. And I also see people stopping. So as much, there's,
I'm gonna,
but I'm
gonna
wondering
take
if we
charge
can
of the
do-
conversation.
Yeah.
Victoria, I can't have you people just talking back and forth, carrying on a conversation. Comments will have to be directed to the chair and I'll redistribute.
Right.
Mr. Cutler's talking right now and we'll let him finish his train of thought. And then the town manager may want to respond. And then if you have something to say, I'll let you chime in later. But
Yeah, my comment was directed, Mr. Chair, more towards the town manager to find out if that's something we can do is repaint the stop bars and maybe paint an island and that would not interfere with the drainage.
So we can repaint the stop bars, and if there isn't a stop bar at one of the intersections, we'll paint one. I don't know if we can just randomly paint islands.
Of course we can.
Check on what we can do there. And just as an FYI, the state hires the vendors that paint the center lines. And they come and go as they please. We have no direction. The state has no direction on that. But we'll redo the stop bars. We've got the stop signs in place. We have the pre-stop signs in place. We have an increased police presence there and very little historical evidence of accidents at the location. So.
yeah, and I want to. We used to have the stencils ourselves for putting in stop bars and that sort of thing. Do we still have those stencils?
We do.
Yeah.
More of an eyeball thing, but they do, yeah, we do the stop bars.
But like you say, the line stripe
Well,
is done by
as soon
now.
as the rain stops this week or next, we'll do stop bars.
Or some century.
Okay, I think we spent enough time on this. We actually have done a lot about this, so we gotta get moving.
Yeah.
Okay, we are moving, we're gonna do some more stuff. We're moving forward on that. Any other public comments? Mike?
My comments in the form of a question, Mr. Chairman. I recently noticed the for sale signs on the Depot Street property. And I wonder if you could update us. Has the property been sold? Are we collecting rent? Is anyone paying taxes?
Three questions?
Yeah.
Sure. So the property is still for sale. We've had several interested parties and one offer, which was rejected for the low ball nature of it. But we have interested parties every week, and we are receiving rent for the J. Crew building. And
Not for the other two?
that's correct.
Correct.
Most of the interested parties now are looking at singular buildings, buying one at a time, which may be something we can consider in the near future, because there's possibility of unloading at least two of them separately.
So I think it was reported at a prior meeting that there was a contract or letter of agreement or something, and there was an objection to contamination. Has that issue been resolved?
It has. We've received a smack letter from the state.
Thank you.
The contamination issue was resolved, but the intent to purchase went away. Victoria, did you have one more question on a different subject? Not seeing it.
I can unmute now. I appreciate, Ivan, your diligence in following up with me. I'm all set at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no more public comments, we'll move into the regular agenda. We'll start with the approval of minutes from the select board meeting of 7.
I have a change in one of those.
Okay,
It says that Greg and I were absent, but we were in fact here.
And that was rectified
I
and
didn't see that. Okay.
there was an update on the minute.
Did not see that.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the select board minutes of 7/23/24.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Agenda item number 6 is Main Street traffic test results.
Okay, so in your packet, you received test results that Jim Henderson of BCRC conducted for us. I think earlier in the summer, we saw the results of the first half of that. The first half was placement of the speed data machine just north of the Vermont Country Store, just prior to entering the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. So the speed limit was still 35 at that particular spot. Backing up, the speed limit is 25 to Barnumville intersection, and then increases to 35 there, and then it goes to 45 just around the Vermont Country Store. So the result you see on that shows a high percentage of what they call enforceable violation at 84%. But the average speed is 39, just prior to it turning 45, which is not a major problem. On the other flip side, further down the road, as the speed limit continues at 45, just prior to increasing again, we put the next placement of the speed box between Hunter Park and North Road. So that speed limit was 45. The average speed there was 44. And so it had only 3% of enforceable violations, which was an interesting result to find. And so basically, really what we're seeing is an acceleration as people head out of town, anticipating the change in the speed limit. You know, the select board wanted to look at this earlier this year and started this process. And so now we've got some hard data to look at. You could consider it further about extending the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit further down the road. But beyond that, it looks there's not really an issue.
I have a hand up on Phil Snow.
All right.
Yeah, I would love to see that data because I live right across from the VNA on Main Street. And the numbers don't hold up. I've got people doing 50 miles an hour in front of my house. And during the rush hours particularly, it's at least 45 in front of my house, which is, and you see the speed sign where the bend is, where people are traditionally hitting that sign. If they're braking, they're doing 42. If they're not braking, they're doing 45 or 50. So I see it every day. I see it from 7 a.m. in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. I hear it. You had a truck do 60 miles an hour down Main Street the other day into the bookstore. They're doing 60 miles an hour out of town in front of my house. So I've spent 6 years talking about this subject with the fact that trying to find a solution to move. There's a lot of solutions to speeding problems. Moving that traffic calming device further out, to where the 35 is instead of the 25. Moving the 35 out, or moving the 25 out further down the road. Paving, putting in entering residential area signs, putting stripes in the road or the speed limit on the road, painting it on the road. There's a lot of solutions to help calm the traffic. Otherwise, I guess I have no solution other than to continue. Well, I haven't continued. I'd say I'll start calling the police and the police chief to get them down to enforce the speeding issues that are through this 35-mile-an-hour speed zone. Scott, I know we've talked about it. I've talked to prior and interim town managers for 6 years, and the speeding isn't getting any better. It's getting worse. So I request the select board to really consider some of those suggestions, including moving the 35 out, moving the 25 out, and doing some of those traffic calming strategies that can help on what is a residential. There's a residential section of of town here that is the historic district that I'm part of. It's the entry to town. You've got tourists walking down the street and seeing huge dump trucks, construction dump trucks every day, driving 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, air braking, jake braking. It's terrible. It's not conducive to a living environment, a tourist environment, and safety is the big issue. I can't cross the street to my mailbox without almost getting killed. I guess I'm still passionate about this 6 years later, and I'm glad that you've got a study that shows some issues. And I'd love to see what the highest speed limit is through that 35-mile-an-hour speed zone, because I see racing down the highway every day by, zooped up cars and motorcycles and you name it, trucks heading out of town and doing the 1 mile speed. You got a drag strip there. So I'm asking for a number of things for you to consider, in addition to the speed limit, moving the speed limits out. And enforcement is an important piece of this too.
But I think moving extending the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit is an important piece of this. I agree with you on that because of the extra development that has happened and it will continue to happen up through there.
And will happen. Yep.
There's a lot more going on there than was just a few years ago. The difficulty is it's a wide, flat, straight piece of road, and we have to do something else to get people to realize that they're in a more densely used part of town there. So I agree with you on that. What those measures will be, we'll continue to check down the list and see what would be a good starting place or place to continue, and test the effectiveness of that and see if we're headed in the right direction. But we appreciate you continuing to bring this to our attention, and we'll continue to work on it.
Yeah, it's just not me. It's my neighbors as well with kids. I don't have kids yet or grandkids yet. I have kids, but I don't have grandkids yet. But there's plenty of kids that live on the street, believe it or not, in this section of 35-mile-an-hour zone.
I just want to let you know that grandkids are great.
One of these days, but I want them to be safe, and even my neighbors' kids to be safe. Any additional things that you can look at in terms of traffic calming that are very effective, other towns in the area have done, like the diagonal lines on the road to create, an awareness, slow down in the road, speed limits in the zone, a lot of things. So yes, I appreciate your consideration.
What the data appears to be telling me is that we don't have a real serious problem in the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit area, but the problem is probably more in the 35 zone.
Right. It's definitely in the 35 because they're making their way to 45 as quickly as they can going north, and they're not slowing down until they hit the curve.
Okay.
At the Palmer House.
Appreciate your input one more time, and we'll continue to chip away at this. Anything else on the traffic results, Scott?
That's all I have right now.
Seeing no hands up, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is general election ballot decision. Due to a change in state statute, the select board must now decide whether to list justice of the peace candidates on the back of the general election ballots. But historically, we've already done that, right? Okay, but we have to make an active decision. Is my understanding. To continue what we've done historically?
That's what we'd like to see, yes. Anita brought this to my attention a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and, you know, she can address it here if she'd like, but,
Sure.
So my name's Anita Sheldon. I'm the clerk here in Manchester. Back in 2020, we started mailing ballots for the general election. In 22, we also mailed ballots in the general election. And now the board is being asked whether or not they want to add the names to the back of the ballot as we have historically. The approval needs to be made by this board because it is a local race, but the general ballots will, or the general election ballots will be mailed to all active registered voters in the town of Manchester. So the state just wants approval that the board understands that those ballots will be mailed.
Okay. And your recommendation is for us to do this?
It would be much easier for election officials and voters. If not, we would have to, or the state would send out the ballots for the general election, and then we would have to take requests for JPs. Anyone who would be interested in voting in the Justice of the Peace race would need to call the clerk's office or log in to request a separate ballot. So it's just adding more confusion for the voters. But I'm willing to go either way. I just need an answer by August 9th so I can let the state know, so I can figure out the other moving pieces.
Oh, we still got 3 days. Yeah.
I know, three's my favorite number. We're good.
So can I just make a motion? I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town clerk to notify the state that the select board will allow the justice of the peace candidates on the back of the general election ballot.
I get a thumbs up on the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Heidi. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. With 3 days to spare. Excellent.
Thanks, Anita.
Town manager update.
I've got several, including that one that's on there. So sandwich board enforcement, you might have seen or heard, we've had some complaints, especially on social media, about our enforcement of the current ordinance. But basically, we were enforcing the existing ordinance, and people had been placing sandwich boards in the sidewalk or on the entrance to the sidewalk, so inhibiting people from walking and stuff. So we just went around and asked the violators, about 10 of them, to move the boards, which they all agreed to. And so the boards are still in place, but not obstructing traffic and not in violation.
And on average, how far did they need to be moved?
Like 3 or 4 feet. And so there was no issues with that. And, you know, this planning commission has got this actually on their agenda, I believe, for the next meeting, which is on the 19th. So they'll be reviewing the current ordinance. Riverwalk update. We met today with the Riverwalk Committee, and Jeff Williams and Gordon Black and myself. And so they're actually ready to move forward on the project. We were trying to look at crane movement and logistics, about getting a giant crane in there, big enough to lift a heavy footbridge. And so what we're looking at is at the end of October, we're gonna close off the green, and they're gonna start building the abutments, with the thought being possibly come springtime, they will get a crane in there and lift this.
And that crane would be on the green?
That would be on the green, right? And would have to be restored to its current condition. We worked with the garden club today also on that issue about what landscaping they would like to see back in place and what they'd like to see removed. And so we're working with them on that too.
I'm glad to hear you say that we're working with the garden club, because I hadn't really heard much about the garden club lately, and it's good to know that they're still
Alive.
Yeah.
So kicking. They were very involved today's discussion, so. Hazard mitigation survey is available. It's posted online. It's also here for anybody who wants to grab one. It's part of our process for a new hazard mitigation plan. And so it's out there till the end of the month, Bonnie. Yeah, and so please complete one and ask your friends to do the same. Finally, there's some FEMA, it looks like we're gonna receive some FEMA recovery money that was unexpected from the flooding from last July. So basically, we've received an approved amount. And the project that we did up on Rootville Road and other places, but especially there, because that was the big culvert place, if you remember, came in under budget. And so FEMA is giving us the difference as long as that money is applied towards flood mitigation type of things like, increasing culverts or expanding their size and that type of thing.
That's good news.
That's about $50,000. So thanks to Peter Brabazon for keeping that, in the fire. And one last comment, Street Fest is scheduled for Friday. The hurricane is not looking too good, so we were gonna make a call by Thursday at noon about rescheduling.
I'm like every one of them. They're like-
No, we had a good one the last one, the one I wasn't there
If we do cancel,
Maybe you should plan to be away,
at. That's right.
if we do cancel, we're thinking about doing on September 13th.
We are, yeah, even though it's into September, it would be Friday the 13th. So we figure that's gotta be good, right?
It's always a good time.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. That's all I have.
Any other business here at the table?
Just really quick, and the first housing task force meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 15th at 5:30 in this room.
Is there a need for an executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we enter executive session for the discussion of board appointments, mature disclosure of which could put the town at a distinct disadvantage.
Second.
And there's a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I just want to, would you anticipate us taking any action coming out of the executive session?
It could be.
Okay, the next meeting is August 20th, but we're gonna go into executive session with the potential for continuing this meeting when we come out. If we don't take action on the executive session item, our only action will be to adjourn, but I want people to understand that we may, there's a potential that we may be taking some action coming out of executive session. We've taken a vote on that, so
Let's do it.
let's do it.
Right. I do, no, no, right. I just do it.